Felipe Ramirez, welcome to the Science of Us.
Tim Mullen, thank you for having me.
Now, the reason we asked you to come on is that we wanted to unpack a little bit more when it comes to personality. We've had Katerina Kern on before talking about the different personalities that we all have. And I think as part of that, a lot of biases are formed in our own minds, a lot of stereotypes about what one personality type should be, how they should behave, etc., etc. And a lot of that is often based more in old school thinking about personalities rather than some of the new age research, a lot of Katerina's research, etc., from a neuroscience perspective. Before we get into that, I want to ask firstly about you and who you are, so the audience understands a little bit about you. And we're going to then use that to delve in and show perhaps some of the inaccuracies and some of the fallacies that people create in their minds when it comes to certain personality types and who people are. So firstly, who is Felipe?
All right, in terms of professional or...
In terms of you as a person
an
overall,
individual.
so that encompasses everything.
Okay, yeah, well, in summary, I would say that I'm kind of like a musician, right? That has high interest in how the universe works. So I have a science degree and an engineering degree, and I work kind of applying biological concepts and modeling them through mathematical models and using them to solve everyday problems and business problems.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of sums it up. I am also very into sports. I've been since I grew up pretty much. I've been doing a lot of martial arts. I used to compete. Nowadays I'm in jiu-jitsu in a mixed martial arts school. I also still practice gymnastics and acrobatics like parkour. I haven't been on the street for a while, but I bought new shoes, so maybe I could, when I get back in shape, like, and I'm full on, I'll go. Maybe I could do a little video. So.
Oh, I'd look forward to seeing that. Now, professionally speaking, so as you said there, it's a beautiful picture of painting holistically who you are. Professionally speaking, right now, what is your role? What does the day-to-day involve?
Yeah, so in Winnings...
Yes.
Yeah, so in Winnings, I'm currently head of R&D. And R&D is a team that I've started, that its purpose was to get scientists and engineers, like people that are more science kind of thinking based, so that they would approach business problems from a numerical perspective or just a rational perspective and break them down into their main components and solve them using scientific method. Now, mostly we're talking about optimization techniques, so it's basically mathematics and statistics, and that's what we have been doing in the company for a long time, like for the last 8 years or something.
And is maths always a big part of who you've been when you look back to what you studied and now obviously your more broader thinking of the universe, etc.? Is maths been a very big part of that, numbers and data?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I started by studying a Bachelor of Civil Engineering, right? So in civil engineering, like real world engineering, they have like a common plan for all the main categories, like civil, industrial, mechanical, etc. And they all have like a strong first 3 years where you do mostly mathematics and physics, right?
Yeah.
Now then I specialized in civil. You need to study about mechanics of materials and all that stuff, like steel design and reinforced concrete and all that. But I never really liked that. It's more like the reason why I ended there has to do more with cultural expectations and all that, right? Then I like biology a lot. Like, I always liked understanding it. When I would look nature, I would see all the other species interacting. I was so intrigued as to how they came to be. So I started learning about evolution, and then I saw that actually with some of the background that I had from math and physics, that there were some biological processes like the way we think in the brain. Like for example, there's neural networks,
Yep.
and with the way that solutions can arise from slight variations. You have genetic algorithms which
Yep.
are essentially evolution happening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that I could specialize a little bit in that. So I came to Australia to study a master's degree and a master's of science in mathematics and statistics,
Yep.
to get more tools to learn about more algorithms, to focus on that. So my main focus is to try and kind of mimic biological processes, but that has taught me that you can apply them to a great variety of problems, including business problems, and that is kind of where you can make them, you know, economically viable.
Yeah. What images do you think, as I listen to everything you're saying right now, what images do you think are conjured up in people's heads as they hear you describing someone who is very deep in mathematics and in biology and in science? What's a visual do you think that comes to mind for most people when they're hearing someone described like that?
Yeah, an image that is probably mostly accurate, based on like my classmates, for example, when I
Yep.
was studying. It's like an introvert kind of awkward person, like probably not very sociable. Perhaps it's just like the common stereotype. It's not that everyone is like that, but it's a stereotype that, I mean, it has some foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, it is to study like things like advanced mathematics or stuff like that. It's very abstract, so it is associated with kind of a bit of like, you know, introverted people, I would say. Yeah.
And you mentioned music before, that you have a love for music and a passion for music.
Mm-hmm.
People have said that there are commonalities between maths and languages and music, you know, all this sort of stuff. Do you believe that you see a link in there yourself from everything that you've studied? Is there a reason you got into music specifically? What was the background for why you are a bit more passionate about music?
So music is something that has always intrigued me since a very young age, before I even understood what science was. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just that's part of an expression, creativity. That's something that I've always liked. You know,
Mhm.
that's something that is a true passion of mine. So I write music, and that's, if I died, I would like to be remembered for that. You know.
Yeah.
However, when we choose our professional careers, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that I don't really enjoy doing the math. Like, it's hard. You need to think, you know, and
Yeah.
but I realized that I could do it, right?
Yeah.
So I was more. I was happier to find out when I could solve something. That gave me more satisfaction than the actual process. So
Mhm.
I ended up turning it into that world, but as you said, kind of, I was more interested in going and playing and you know, going to the pub and that stuff, more so than, at least when I studied my master's degree, more so than most of my classmates.
Yeah.
However, you do meet people who are also, you know, kind of more on the creative side, that are there studying, but there's also a lot of people that are like really into that is their world.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, they feel uncomfortable if they're outside of that.
You mentioned introversion before, and I know that Kat has a specific viewpoint on this in terms of the traditional definition of introvert. And JC, if I sort of cross to you, I believe that this is something that needs to be defined better in terms of introvert versus extrovert, that what we believe right now is actually incorrect. But I know you well, Felipe. I know that we've been out many times socially, and if someone was to come and meet you and see you, I don't think that they would firstly pick that you were into data, into mathematics, into biology, into science. You don't come off as that person that we described before as the stereotype of white lab coat introvert, whatever it might be. You're the person that is the life of the party. You're the lifeblood of the party. People have so much fun when they're around you. What do you think that says about our traditional definitions, therefore, of personality?
It's a very interesting topic, because it's funny now that you mention it. Actually, if I'm in a social environment, like if we're in a party, you know, like the chances that I would talk about what I do are zero. Like feel a bit uncomfortable. It's not something that you would talk like on a social setting.
Yep.
It's it's a bit deep. You need to think when you're having a drink. That's not what you want to be doing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, for example, when we hang out, like I feel that we're just, having like a sociable moment, like just having fun, a
Agreed.
drink, and talking about random stuff without the need to go
Our
deep.
shared common passionate of pisco or something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
So some pisco sours, and then the thing is like, like when we hang out, for example, that we can go and talk about like deep subjects, but in a different sense. Like I enjoy like the mental gymnastics or intellectual gymnastics, however you want to call it. But it's a different thing. So yeah, I think firstly, I don't feel like that person, that stereotypical person, and I wouldn't talk about that because that's not like something very. I understand that it's from a party perspective that's not fun, and I don't think it's fun either, But when it comes in the office, it's a different thing. Like in the office, if you want me to show you how everything works, then I would do, like at your own risk. But that's the thing. Like, that's why I enjoy when we hang out too, because we're on a different setting, and you also are kind of similar in that regard, because when we are hanging out, we're not trying to put our professional parts, and we're just relaxed and enjoying the moment, right?
Yes. And this is the interesting part about the deeper drivers of personality as well, because in Kat's work, and as you know that very well, because you obviously know her very well, it's fascinating to understand that if it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning, the outward view that people have, that very shallow level view of you do this, so therefore you are this person, is often so misconstrued. Again, if you look at me, for instance, we share very similar personality traits. We've both done some of the personality profiling. We are sort of in that same spectrum, and it's very interesting though. So what I do, I'm not good at maths, right? So I understand numbers. I can use numbers enough, but I'm definitely not at that same level as you. But again, if people were purely comparing it then from a work side, to say that Felipe heads up R&D, he must just be an introvert who never goes out and has any fun. Whereas compared to me, Tim, he likes to build businesses. He's about creativity. So he must go out and have fun. Mm-hmm. But quite often, when I look at and compare us, like you are much more the lifeblood of the party than I ever am. And it's kind of this interesting, this piece where I just think that when you go from that outset and that outward view and say, oh no, this is just, I'm going to cast my stereotype of what this person is, it can be so misleading.
Yes, it's funny. Like you have the potential of being the biggest life of the party, right? And I always try to bring that out. But
I just never get there.
Exactly. No, but you have the same. You want to enjoy the moment, in a casual way. That's the thing. What was Kat's definition of introvert versus extrovert?
I might cross to JC for this. What is the definition of introvert from Katarina's viewpoint?
It's not about people who are shy and not shy.
So it's not about people who are shy and not shy.
More about where you get your energy from. Is it from an internal source or an external?
Hold on a second. I'm going to bring him over here. Come over here. Come and talk.
Give us your
everyone
wisdom.
Can hear. Okay, go again.
So it's less about being shy and reserved or being outgoing and super loud. It's more about where you get your energy from. So if introverted people get a lot of their energy from an internal source, they don't really need other people for that. Whereas extroverted people get their energy a lot from external sources. So that's why they're more outgoing, because that's where they get their energy from.
Interesting.
Thank
but
you.
That by saying that would mean, if I understand it correctly, that means that if you get your energy from an internal source, like, is that applied to self-motivation? Because, for example, I am very self-motivated. I like to do stuff, and I don't care if I have to do them alone.
Yeah.
Right? So then maybe we are introverts in that regard. Like, I don't need external motivation to do something. I find the motivation internal. Is that the same thing, or is it different?
Look, I think, and JC can correct me here, but I think it comes down to when we talk about emotion and the deepest drivers of what actually makes us feel a certain way and act a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I know that for me, when I'm in that flow, when I feel truly who I am, it's about being around other people. It's about doing creative things. It's about feeling a sense of variety and having that sense of autonomy as well, which I think actually comes into it. But that all is deeper, the deep-seated pieces that are actually feeding me and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was in a capacity of building a business or another sort of role, that would always be the deepest drivers of what would motivate me. And that's why it's interesting then if I ask you, because you mentioned at the beginning about your passion for music and your passion for creativity and all this kind of stuff. Is that when you truly feel alive?
Yes, 100%. Like, for example, like there's been times like, I don't know, imagine we go out on a Friday and we have maybe two extra drinks.
Too many piscos, yeah.
And then the next day you feel like you kind of like you don't really want to do anything.
Yeah.
I can spend the entire day like playing the piano, like non-stop, for example. I used to do that when I was learning a lot, for example. And then I realized like those moments, because now sometimes I find some of the old music I was playing and it kind of transports me back to that moment. So that's kind of where I was alive, right? On the same note, you were talking about people are surrounding you, whatever. It's the same thing. I really enjoyed going to any sort of party so that I would meet and interact with different people. So my motivation comes from, I believe that I have gone through a way of learning certain things, and I always try to either share like the positive things that I've learned with the people that surround me. Now that means not that we're gonna talk about something scientific, but maybe like, hey, have you tried this? Let's do this. You know what I mean? And then you make the people around you marginally happier or marginally smarter if they learn something new. That's from the people point of view. From the internal point of view, as I was saying, like the music, for example, when I'm doing like gymnastics or something, like that moment when you use your own legs to jump and generate enough power to do like a front flip or any sort of acrobatic, that 1 second you spend in the air, also like it's almost on a spiritual level, you know. So those are the things that drive me from a spiritual, you know. I mean, I say spiritual because it's not really spiritual, but it's more about like the things that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you feel you truly understand yourself and you know who you are?
Well, that's a tough one, but I would say, to a satisfactory degree. Like what I realized as I was growing up is that many of the things that you were taught about, either by society or you know, or teachers or whatever, are actually simply incorrect, right? So as I grew up, there was a point like in my late teens where I realized, look, I'm gonna start over everything again. I'm gonna start building the foundations of everything, right? So I started learning about everything and evaluating it, whether I considered it could be possible or impossible or correct or incorrect. And then I started just ditching many of the things that I was taught, and then I started building on top of that. So that helped me discover that path of learning about who you are and all that stuff. So that's why I feel to a satisfactory degree, because that's how I would define myself, as somebody that likes to interact with other people in a party environment, as somebody that enjoys creativity and sports, and they go hand in hand, because creativity is expressed through music, for example, right? And you can also express it in your way of movement, like when you talk about like free running or parkour. It's just an expression. It's a form of expression, right? The same with how you interact with people, you know. You can share those things, and believe it or not, you can also do it when it comes to science. Your approach to solving problems, you know, can be outside of the box. You know what I mean? If you have that creative side.
And how do you think that compares to the people around you? Like, how do you think people that you know, whether it be friends, family, work circles, how much do they know about themselves? And can you tell when you talk to them?
Yes, I would say, and then again, just for the record, I'm no expert on like psychiatrist or psychologist or in any form, but my interpretation of this is that you can tell. I think there is a very important factor with the people that I normally meet, right?
Yeah.
And there is the difference between knowing where you're going, having your targets. Do you know what you want to do? Are you happy with what you're doing?
Yeah.
And I would say most people are not, in the sense that they don't really know what they want to do. They don't really know. They don't have things very clear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's an internal struggle as to, should I do this? Should I change my career? Should I do that? Right?
Yeah.
Now that is something that for some reason I'm the opposite of that. Like, I've always known exactly where I want to go and what I want to do. So when I'm around people, and it happens more often than not, that if they're friends of mine, they will tell me that situation, like, what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? And I always feel like I I can give them a bit more confidence, like help them or guide them. I just feel that responsibility, because I would insist that I think most people are not sure about what they're doing or where they want to go.
And that is, I think, one of the main reasons we do this podcast, why we ask the questions that we do. It's such a deep topic to go into, who you fundamentally are as a person. Felipe, thank you for joining us for one of our first live sessions. Again, for the audience, we are sitting 1.5 meters apart for reasons of
social
pandemic, social, indeed. But it's been a pleasure, mate, to have you. And, you're someone I call a good friend. So nice to be able to chat to you and to open up about some of these things.
Yeah, mate. Always great having a chat with you. And we will have some pisco sours soon, hopefully.
We will indeed. Hopefully this weekend.
Yes. 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.